Ross, the way you started, birth, artificial insemination, parents, 2 lesbians. You not only became a Christian, but you're even reaching lesbians for the Lord.
When you're born by artificial insemination and you have 2 lesbian moms, a baby only knows what a baby knows. I didn't have a spiritual father. Though I was born into my bloodline and my family, I'm now in the
bloodline of Jesus.
Though I love them and I care for them, my greater reality is that I'm known by the God of the universe.
Oh, because clearly the most pressing concern for a baby is their spiritual bloodline.
I'm just going to finish this chapter.
Not, being fed and changed regularly, cared for by people who love them. Alright, so what's going on, my fellow apes? Well, we're diving into an episode of Sid Roth's It's Supernatural. If you haven't heard of it, then good for you. It's an evangelical show that I somehow didn't know about, but holy moly, we now have content for low fruit for eons. Today, though, we're focusing on an often subtle narrative that causes a lot of harm to a lot of people, featuring Ross Johnston. Ross grew up with 2 mums and was conceived through artificial insemination. He joined Sid to share his struggles of feeling lonely, his frustrations with X-rated content, and his radical embrace of Christianity, all with an underlying tone that same-sex parenting leaves emotional holes that can only be filled by a big, fat crucifix. Talking of big, fat, vascular crucifixes, this video is sponsored by Adam and Eve. One of the features of indoctrination is the repression of sexual appetite. They make what's beautiful ugly. As Hitchens eloquently put it, the pious claim jurisdiction over who you can sleep with and in what position. And so, throughout the process of deconstructing religious beliefs, it's crucial to find ways to embrace our desires without judgment, and Adam and Eve have been filling that hole for over 50 years. They offer 24/7 customer service, a 90-day no-hassle return policy, and everything they send is in discreet packaging to ensure your privacy every step of the way. Simply put, they make shopping easy and comfortable. So, if you're wanting a bit of spice in your life, I highly encourage that you visit adamandeve.com, and when you do, don't forget to use the code RULES to get 50% off 2 items and free shipping in the US and Canada. Thanks again to Adam and Eve for the support. Together, we'll get rid of the nasty thoughts about nasty thoughts. Alright, with that, let's get back to the world of repression, with Sid kicking things off by asking Ross about his childhood in a lesbian household.
Ross, what was your childhood like?
Well, for me, it was normal because when you're born by artificial insemination and you have 2 lesbian moms, a baby only knows what a baby knows. And so I remember as I grew up and I looked at the world around me, I noticed that they didn't have 2 moms. They typically had 1 mom and 1 dad, but when I went home, that wasn't the case for me. And I remember as I started to get older, I didn't recognize what the root or the cause was, but I began to feel lonely. I began to feel like nobody truly saw me, and I didn't really know my destiny or purpose or why I was on the earth.
Okay, so on the one hand, Ross is conveying something that anyone that has anything significantly different about them experiences. If you don't have a mother or a father, you'll feel different and thus disconnected from those who do. If you don't have close relatives, you'll feel isolated and lacking when you notice other kids hanging around with their cousins. Fair enough, right? But on the other hand, he, Sid, and evangelicals in general imply that Ross's isolation and lack of purpose was due specifically to him being raised by 2 lesbians, which evangelicals see as a sin. And the underlying message is that the absence of a traditional heterosexual family structure, per biblical instruction, causes adverse psychological outcomes. Now, while many take care to obfuscate, to shroud this argument, just as we're seeing here, others are not so subtle, such as what we've seen before on this channel with the likes of Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro.
The child will be deprived of what he needs, which is both a mother and a father, so that the gay couple can get what they want. This is the essence of the whole practice, exchanging the needs of the child for the wants of grown adults.
As to whether Ross is inflaming this narrative on purpose, or whether he's being used by insidious Sid to demonize minorities, it's unclear. But sadly, the damage is all the same. It lands regardless. Elsewhere, Ross has expressed great affection for his mums, but he's here certainly doing them and the LGBTQ+ community altogether a disservice. Anyhow, let's address the crux of the insidious argument. The narrative that is being subtly woven into Ross's account hinges on the assertion that growing up with same-sex parents leads to loneliness and a lack of purpose. This premise is used with potent force to further the agenda that traditional heterosexual family structures are superior and even essential for healthy psychological development, a claim often promulgated by evangelicals. The studies, however, have consistently shown that children raised by same-sex parents develop just as well as those raised by heterosexual parents. For instance, a cohort study published in BMC Public Health states that there is a large body of research that indicates that developmental, social, and emotional outcomes for children raised in same-sex parented families are at least equal to those of heterosexual parented peers. Interestingly, the study goes on to say, recent studies have shown that lesbian mothers tend to organise family and work responsibilities more equitably than heterosexual couples, which may contribute to higher levels of relationship satisfaction. This suggests that same-sex parenting might even offer some unique benefits. These studies, among many others, have led the American Psychological Association to conclude that there is no evidence to suggest that lesbian women or gay men are unfit to be parents, or that psychological development among children of lesbian women or gay men is compromised relative to that among offspring of heterosexual parents. Not a single study has found children of lesbian or gay parents to be disadvantaged in any significant respect relative to children of heterosexual parents. But who cares what the science says? Proponents of this narrative certainly don't. They rely on gut intuition that's been carved by repressed hands, and they go to great lengths to ostracize the science and data that doesn't support their icky intuition. Now, you're probably wondering, if the sexual orientation of parents doesn't cause the negatives that Ross experienced, then what does? Well, he said it himself.
I began to feel lonely. I began to feel like nobody truly saw me.
Ross's loneliness might have stemmed, or at least partially stemmed, from his parents being different to his friends' parents. But loneliness is not inherently tied to having same-sex parents, is it? It arises from a multitude of personal experiences and external factors. I mean, it's not a secret that children with heterosexual parents frequently experience feelings of isolation and a lack of belonging. But let's step firmly in what they're laying here. Suppose Ross's loneliness stems specifically from a lack of male role models. Fair enough. Young men benefit significantly from having grown men in their lives. Still, these male role models don't have to come from traditional heterosexual family structure. In fact, there are countless other places where strong, positive male figures can play a role in a child's life. For instance, mentorship programs like Big Brothers, Big Sisters pair kids with male mentors who provide guidance, friendship, and support. Extended family members, such as uncles and grandfathers, are also common sources of male influence, offering a nurturing and stable presence. Then there's teachers and coaches, often serving as role models by providing encouragement, discipline, and an understanding ear outside of the home. Then there are community leaders, whether from local organizations, clubs, or indeed religious groups. And let's not forget, family friends.
And I remember right before I went to church, that first ever church service, I was actually introduced to pornography. I had never seen it for 15 years of my life, which in our culture today is almost a miracle in itself. And I remember that started about an 8-year-long journey of battling with the porn addiction. Because why? I graduated high school, I had an encounter with God, awesome, but I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a spiritual father. I wasn't plugged into a local church in college, and I kind of floated.
Yeah. Now, Ross's motives have become a little more suspect. He's selling the narrative that a lack of having a spiritual father led to his struggles with not being able to leave his third leg alone. Heavily implying that if he wasn't raised by two women, he'd have been less likely to have faced, and let's face it, still face, this challenge. But newsflash, my dude, all men get a lifetime subscription to the daily struggle of X-rated content. You can blame evolution or your god for biologically programming us to produce millions of sperm a day, and then judging us for having the audacity to try and get rid of any of it.
Oh, that wasn't me, that was a spooky ghost!
The core tension here is, of course, the lack of a spiritual model being attributed as the root cause of Ross's struggles, with the implication being that a specific family structure is necessary for a proper moral development that, wouldn't you know, conveniently aligns with contemporary evangelical bigotry, but utterly lacks substantial evidence.
Coincidence? I think not!
This whole narrative is bullshit, and those that actually know anything about the data They know it. They know it's bullshit. Many men raised in traditional loving family structures also grapple with the tackle, and plugging oneself into a church isn't going to remove the thoughts and desires. It's going to repress them.
Ross, the way you started, birth, artificial insemination, parents, 2 lesbians. You not only became a Christian, but you're even reaching lesbians for the Lord.
Oh, I am so sorry for everyone who has family members that unironically watch this stuff. It's a travesty.
The reality is, the best way that I look at it is this. Though I was born into my bloodline and my family, I'm now in the bloodline of Jesus. Though I love them and I care for them, my greater reality is that I'm known by the God of the universe.
Here, Ross is rather strangely alienating his family. He's saying that although I was born into my family and although I love them greatly, I have a greater family now, which is, shall we say, problematic. By presenting and comparing same-sex relationships with Christianity, Ross is insinuating that they are not compatible. But they are. And with Ross putting his religious family above his actual family, he is exercising precisely the behaviour encouraged by cults.
So you're not a cult? A cult? No.
Slight tangent, but why is it that the more fundamental a Christian becomes, the less like Jesus they act? Alienating others and diminishing the legitimacy of diverse families is fundamentally discordant with the core tenets of compassion and love that Jesus preached. Now, we have to wonder, being the son of 2 mums, surely Ross is aware of how the web he's weaving stigmatizes LGBTQ plus families by suggesting that they are less capable of providing love, support, and stability. No? While he's sure to express that he loves his mothers, Ross is, without doubt, perpetuating a culture of intolerance and ignorance that has his mothers at the centre of the bullseye.
And you really didn't have a mentor in your life at that time, and you fell into sin.
And as for Sid, he's interested in selling the current evangelical homophobic spew. That's why he immediately brings on the likes of Ross, but never, not once, will he bring on one of the countless people who grew up with same-sex parents who are perfectly fine. No, he pedestals those who can further his anti-LGBT agenda.
That if God says you're not to be a practicing homosexual, then you can abstain. I know you can do that.
He exploits personal stories to advocate for the policies that discriminate against non-traditional families. Anyhow, as always, thank you kindly for the view, and an extra special thank you to everyone who supports the channel, including Adam and Eve, whose site you can see linked below. Thanks.